So today's lecture is going to discuss how to create controllers and the proper rigging for your character now that the joints have been created and bound to the skin. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure that my joints in fact are bound to the skin, and as you can see, you really can't see the joints through his skin. So we're going to go to the shading menu for the perspective window panel, and notice that I've got default material turned on, so you're not seeing the textures for right now. In addition, we've got the X-ray and the X-ray joints. So I'm going to click on X-ray joints, and you'll see with the X-ray joints, all the joints are appearing. And I also have them colorized for when I bind them to the skin, so that way I can see very quickly that they actually are attached to the skin. Furthermore, I'll select a particular joint, turn on my rotate tool, and just make sure that we're fully bound and that our paint weights are looking good and the skin isn't stretching in bizarre ways. So I'm pretty happy with that. So the idea of rigging requires us to create some very basic, simple NURBS circles, and then we use what's called inverse schematics to actually do the animations in our character. So I'm going to click on the Curves and Surfaces shelf and create myself a NURBS circle. Now everything always gets added to the 0, 0, 0 quadrant, so I'm going to drag this down into his feet area, and I don't exactly know where I'm going to put it quite yet, so we're just going to put it down there, and then I'm going to pop into my four-way view to then place it exactly where I would like it to go. So over here on the side view, I'm going to increase my scale and make it more into an ovalish shape. You can see in the perspective window what the oval shape looks like. Not too big, not too small. In addition, we want to place this underneath his foot and put it right at ground level where his foot's going to be touching the ground. So you can zoom in if you need to. The other key here is that when we create the size and scale of this particular NURBS circle, we want to make sure that we don't cross over that center line in the middle. We're going to have to create the same circle on the other side, and so we want to make sure that we don't have any overlaps in the middle. It'll make animation much easier down the line. So I'm going to make this a little skinnier and then adjust the width of it. And you can pretty much see over here in the perspective window that it's an oversized flip-flop of sorts. Okay, so that's located on his left side, and at this time I'm actually going to Control D to duplicate and then move it over to the other side to place it over there as well. Alright, so now I've got two different NURBS circles. Looks like I don't have it moved over quite enough, so let's check that out. Make sure that we're not touching in the middle right there. Move it over just a smidge more. Alright, so now that I've got both of these NURBS circles in place, I'm actually going to name them accordingly. So this one on the character's left side is going to get a new name called Left Foot CNTL, stands for control. And on his right side, we'll select that one and we'll call this one Right Foot CNTL. And Maya will create U underscores whenever you put spaces in the name, because you can't have spaces in the name, so keep that in mind. Alright, so now that we've created these controllers, the next thing we're going to do is actually attach them to the foot using what's called inverse schematics. So I'm going to pop on out right here and show you a bigger picture. Right now, if I wanted to animate my character, I'd have to select this thigh joint that we've created, which is essentially in your quad area, the knee joint and the ankle joint, and do all different kinds of rotations on each of these joints. That makes for difficult animation down the line. So what we do is, while our forward schematics, which is how our body typically moves, is from the core of our body, which is our root joint. You can see I've named mine root right here. It's also like the main part of our body, which is like stemming from the base of our spinal column. That's where we get all of our energy from. And so in the idea of inverse schematics, it says, let's look at our body from the opposite direction, and instead of moving our body based on the hip and then the thigh and then the knee and then the ankle, we're actually going to pick up the foot, and when we pick up the foot, we want the leg to go with it. So when it comes to inverse schematics, we want to make sure that our drop-down list is set to rigging, because we are doing a rigging process right now. We'll go to the skeleton menu, and then we're going to click on the options box next to Create IK Handle. IK again stands for inverse schematics. So when we click on that, it takes us into the tool settings. Now the default setting for you might be set to single chain or rotation plane. And here's the biggest difference between the two. The single chain, if you can imagine the old Barbie doll Mattel figurine where you could swing the Barbie doll's legs all the way around her body. Now, physically, as humans, we can't do that, and so we have limitations as to how high or how much rotation we can get into our legs. That limitation on rotation is what we refer to as a rotation plane. On the contrary, your arms, if you are a swimmer, or again, going back to the Barbie doll, if you wanted to swim and move your arms all the way around in a big circle, do the butterfly stroke or even the forward stroke or backstroke, you can move your arms in a full 360-degree rotational direction, and it works. So your single chain is best applied to your arms, whereas the rotation plane is going to be best applied to your legs. So we're going to click on rotation plane, solver, and you'll see that what we're first going to click on is going to be closest to our body. For us, it's going to be the thigh. Okay, so we'll click once there. Not a whole lot happens with this, but then we'll click on the second one at his foot, okay, or his ankle area. And you'll see that when I did this, I've got this big brown circle coming around and this little white pole vectors coming out of it. And if I were to click off, let's see, click off. If I click off, you can kind of see that there's a brown handle sticking out at the very bottom of his foot. For the brief moment, let me close out of this menu here, and let's also go into X-ray so you can kind of see, hopefully, inside of the body right here. I can even turn off my show polygons. Turn off my body for a moment. Here we go. Here is this inverse schematic that was just created for us. The top of it is at the very first click, which is always closest to your spine. Typically, you're going to skip a joint. You'll see in just a little bit here how that works. And then you're going to next click will go to the next possible joint, which is going to be the ankle area. All right, let me turn back on my polygon so you can see what we just did. So I'm going to select the handle of the IK solver, okay? And so when I go to use the move tool, if you can see my character, turn off the X-ray for a moment here. When I go to move it now, do you see how I can create a pretty smooth walking motion by simply creating myself that IK handler? Okay, so now when I go to create a walk cycle, it doesn't require me to click on the top joint, click on the knee joint, click on the ankle joint. I simply can click on this one right here and it will do the walk cycle for me pretty easily. So those slight adjustments that I've just done, I've pressed the Z key to undo those movements. I don't actually want to keep those in place, so I've zeroed out my inverse schematic. All right. So all that being said, my IK handle is created. I'm going to rename these because at some point you'll have too many IKs that you won't know which one is which. So we're going to click on the name in the channel box there. And we're going to call this left foot IK. All right, pretty straightforward, right? The next thing is that why do we have to use that rotation plane with that pole vector, or which directions is supposed to be pointing? Well, a key thing right here is that the white arrow is pointing out, and so that's going to be our pole vector. All right, well, at this point, let me turn to the side. If I go to click on this and move it, imagine that there's an imaginary line coming straight out from this white pole vector. When I go to kick, in my Kung Fu fighting, the minute my mouse crosses over that invisible line that we just drew out to the screen, that invisible line, that's where your foot kicks around. So you and I, if we were to stand up and kick as high as we possibly could, and then we're like, maybe I can kick a little bit higher, at some point, your whole body, hips, they all rotate to the side, thus allowing your foot to kick even higher than what you thought you could do, okay? So that's what the pole vector is all about. If you wanted to manipulate that and change the direction or the angle of it, you could always go into, with your IK handle selected, we will go into our, hold on, our modify menu, and then we're we will go down to, actually no, let's go to Windows menu, I'm sorry, and click on, I'm spacing out here. Oh, so it's Modify Transformation Tools. And here's the Universal Manipulator tool. So this is the only way that we're going to be able to select our pole vector. And you can see that when I select it, I can pull it straight on out and pull it straight on down. And this is going to change the direction of my ability to kick high or low. So now that I've pulled this out, I'm going to switch back to the handler, and using the typical move tool, the translate tool, the W key, you'll see that when I move my foot up now and I cross over that invisible line, so to speak, that's your pull vector, you can see that that knee twist is occurring much earlier than it did when it originally came in the original spot way up here. So that is the idea behind a pull vector and how you can change the threshold in which your leg will start to twist or turn. Furthermore, if I were to pull that pull vector out to the side, when the character walks, he'll have more of like a swagger or like a bow-legged move. If I were to pull it inward, his feet would go in front of one another just naturally with the IK handler due to the placement of the pull vector. All right, I'm going to remove the change in my pull vector so it's back to the standard. So we're back to square one here. All right, oops, and I actually removed too much. So this is called his left foot IK. All right, moving onward. So the next thing we're going to do is create a strand or a string of different IKs in the foot area so his foot will bend naturally. So as I mentioned earlier, typically when you do an IK handler, you go from the closest to the body, you skip a joint, and then you go to the next one. And that is the pretty typical use of using the IKs. However, in this case, I'm not going to skip. I'm going to go from the ankle to the ball and create another one from the ball to the foot. And this is part of a foot chain that allows us to have more of a heel rolling motion versus a flap or a duck walk kind of motion. So once again, we'll go to skeleton, click on create IK handle, and then we're going to go to the ankle down to the ball, and that's the newest one. So we'll rename this one to left ball IK, and then we'll create one more IK from the ball to the toe. And this one will be called left, I'm going to say left toe IK. Okay, perfect. All right, so that is how we go about creating IKs. Now I'm going to recreate the same IKs over here on his right foot. You cannot copy and paste or duplicate IKs. They have to be actually created on the actual joints themselves. So I'm going to take a moment here to turn off my polygon so I can see my IKs a little bit better on his right foot over here. So we'll click on the IK handler. Once again, it's already set to rotation plane, so we'll click on this one. And we'll skip over the knee and go to the ankle. And this will be called right leg IK. And then we'll reactivate the tool, and this will go from the ankle to the ball. And this will be called right ball IK. And we'll do one more from the ball to the toe. This one will be called right toe, toe IK. All right, fantastic. At this point, we've created the structure that we needed to have in place. However, we've not connected them quite yet in order for the foot to move the way we want it to move. And the purpose of this controller at the bottom here is so that way we no longer will need to select these joints or the IK. We only want to select the controllers when it comes time for animation. So I'm going to switch over to my Q key, which is the selection arrow, so I can select the different IKs. And in addition, we also want to go through what's called a parent-child relationship. So as you know, when it comes to parent-child relationships, we select the child first, then you shift select the parent second, and then you can press the P key, or you can come over to the edit menu and choose parent right there. All right, so that being said, you'll see over here in my outliner, I've got all of my IKs listed right there as well as the 2-foot controllers. So the first thing we're going to do is start at the bottom of our chain, and so I'm going to select the very first IK, which is on his left foot, and then shift select the ball IK in that order. So it's toe IK, shift select ball IK. So the ball is going to be the parent to the toe, and again I'm going to press the P key as in parent. Okay, P. All right.